There are films that entertain, and then there are films that permanently rewire an entire industry. When a gritty police thriller arrived in theaters in 1971, it didn't just introduce a new kind of hero. It cracked open a national conversation about justice, morality, and the limits of the law that Hollywood hadn't dared to have before. And the behind-the-scenes story is just as gripping as anything on screen. Let's get into it. The road to casting the lead detective was a slow-motion disaster. The studio's first choice was a legendary entertainer whose magnetism could fill any room, but a hand injury made it impossible for him to handle the required firearm. Next came a rugged American icon who found the film's moral edge too harsh. Then a cooler, faster star who wanted the script rebuilt from scratch. Even a thoughtful, socially conscious actor passed, uncomfortable with how far the story pushed the boundaries of acceptable justice. By the time the studio landed on their eventual lead, they weren't making a choice. They were out of options. And yet that final, desperate decision produced something no careful plan could have manufactured. A performance so perfectly matched to the material that imagining anyone else in the role now feels almost impossible. Necessity has a way of creating brilliance that planning simply cannot. The film's villain wasn't invented. He was constructed from one of the most disturbing unsolved cases in California history. At the time the script was being written, a real predator was terrorizing the Bay Area, sending taunting messages to newspapers and law enforcement, daring investigators to catch him. The writers studied those communications obsessively, modeling their fictional killer on someone motivated not by logic, but by spectacle and control. In a detail that bordered on surreal, one of the actual detectives assigned to the real case was brought on as a technical consultant. He sat on set and watched a fictional version of his investigation play out in front of cameras, while the real perpetrator was still out there. That experience sat somewhere between professional pride and something much harder to name. Physical danger on a film set is often exaggerated. On this one, it was real. During the rooftop chase sequence, the lead actor dismissed repeated warnings about the structural condition of the buildings and pushed ahead without a stunt double. The surface gave way. He fell more than 12 feet and hit the ground hard enough to lose consciousness. When he came around, the crew pushed for a medical stop. He wiped the blood from his face and told them to keep rolling. That wound visible in the final cut wasn't makeup. It was genuine. And it gave the sequence a rawness that no amount of choreography could have manufactured. One of the most quoted lines in cinema was never written by anyone. During the scene where the detective confronts a wounded criminal, the original script had a longer, more elaborate exchange. The actor found it overcrowded and asked the director if he could try something stripped down. What came out in that take stunned the crew into silence. Even the actor on the receiving end couldn't hold his composure once the cameras stopped. That improvised moment didn't just define a character. It set the template for a certain kind of cool, minimal, psychologically loaded dialogue that action films have been chasing ever since. Law enforcement's relationship with the production began warmly and collapsed quickly. Local police had offered access, personnel, and technical support. That goodwill disappeared once officers read the full script. The character's contempt for procedure struck many as a dangerous distortion of their profession, and within weeks a significant number had walked off the production entirely. A formal union statement followed, accusing the film of damaging public trust in law enforcement. The crew adapted, filling the gaps with private personnel. But every protest and every official objection only deepened public curiosity. The film that was supposed to be derailed by controversy was being made more legendary by it. A single prop became a cultural crisis. Before this film, the large-caliber revolver at the center of its marketing was known mainly to hunters and firearms specialists. After release, it became a symbol, and that symbol had consequences. Retailers couldn't keep up with demand. The manufacturer had to implement new distribution controls. More troubling were the police reports that followed, where individuals involved in violent incidents specifically cited the film as their inspiration. Hollywood had presented a weapon as cinematic shorthand for power, and for some people, that translation had been entirely literal. The film industry found itself at the center of a debate about glamorizing specific weapons that would echo for decades. The actor cast as the killer didn't just learn the role. He descended into it. Given access to actual federal psychological profiles on real offenders, he spent weeks studying the behavioral patterns of people who had committed violent crimes, meeting with analysts, pulling apart the logic that drives predatory behavior. The performance that resulted felt genuinely unpredictable in the way that real danger feels unpredictable. Viewers after release couldn't fully separate the actor from the role. Threatening letters arrived at his home. Strangers confronted him in public. He later said that getting back out of that character took far longer than the filming itself. Great villains cost their performers something real. A single scene, where the detective extracts information through methods that completely ignore legal protections, ended up in law school curricula across the country. Civil liberties organizations cited it. Law enforcement groups used it to articulate their own frustrations. Professors built entire lectures around the tension it captured between what the law permits and what a situation seems to demand. Students debated it across generations. A fictional moment in a fictional film had articulated a genuine philosophical problem more vividly than dense legal scholarship had managed to do for years. When the studio slashed the budget midway through production, the panic was immediate. Elaborate set pieces were scrapped. A major vehicle chase through the city's hilly streets was replaced with a simple foot pursuit. The location chosen for the film's climactic confrontation, a desolate quarry with an almost post-apocalyptic atmosphere, was selected primarily because it was inexpensive. What it brought to the screen was irreplaceable. That barren, hostile terrain gave the final confrontation an emotional gravity that no purpose-built set could have matched. The studio cut costs and accidentally sharpened the film's entire identity in the process. The film's closing image, a detective discarding the badge that represented everything he had sacrificed for, was never in the script. The actor proposed it himself, drawing on an older film he admired in which a similar act of disillusionment ended a story about duty and its cost. The director wasn't immediately sold. Would audiences read it as defeat? Would it undermine the film's message? Eventually the argument won, and the scene was shot without a single line of dialogue. Just the action. Just the silence. Just the meaning. That wordless moment became the frame most people carry with them when they think about this film. It said more than any scripted line could have, because it didn't need to say anything at all. What this film proved is something that still holds true more than 50 years later. The most enduring cinema is rarely just about what appears on screen. It's built from desperate decisions, accidents that become signatures, arguments that nearly destroyed everything, and convictions held by people who believed in something before the evidence was there. Every frame of a film that lasts is made from choices that could easily have gone the other way. The ones that survive are the ones where the right people held firm at exactly the right moment.